This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Starting with chapter 10 tonight, right?
Yeah. So this is the beginning of the Great Hunt.
Yeah. Chapter 10, the hunt begins, and our symbol is the horn, which is one we don't see very much.
No. I mean, it's certainly when it gets blown.
Yeah. But that's a pretty obvious symbol.
Yeah. I don't think we had to explain what the horn represents.
In a literal sense. Ingtar set a fast pace for the beginning of a long journey. Fast enough that Rand was worried a little about the horses. The animals could keep up a trot for hours, but there was still most of the day ahead, and likely days more beyond that. The way Ingtar's face was set, though, Rand thought he might intend to catch those who had stolen the horn in the first day, in the first hour. Remembering his voice when he swore his oath to the Emerald Seed, Rand would not have been surprised. He kept his mouth shut, though. It was Lord Ingtar's command. As friendly as he had been to Rand, he still would not appreciate a shepherd giving him advice. Hurin rode a pace behind Ingtar, but it was the sniffer who led them south, pointing the way.
I do think it's funny that he's, being very careful of Ingtar's command, even though he's technically second in command.
Yeah, and there's a couple moments where some of the seasoned soldiers are like looking at Rand funny.
Well, yeah, because I think Ingtar is giving some pretty crappy orders, and they're like, well, who's second in command? Rand. Let's look to him for a contradiction.
And they expect him to object or something.
Yeah.
It'll come up.
Definitely. We'll point him out as we come through, but I wanted to sort of have that up front.
I forget if it's Uno or Massima at some point looks at Rand after kind of a sketchy order and stares at him for a second. Yeah, it's Uno. I think the line is stares at Rand with his one eye, and then shrugs and gets on his horse and leaves.
It's tough to know who Uno is actually looking at with the one eye. Wait, is it the patch looking at me, or is it? Well, I guess he doesn't have the painted patch yet. He gets that later.
Not? I don't know.
No, I remember there's a scene where Elaine, or Elaine sees him and is like, "Oh, he picked up that patch. He didn't used to have it."
So we see Hurin leading the group, and at some point, they come up upon the Dark Friend camp from the night before, and Uno notes that there's a bunch of Trollocs with them, because he can see the difference between, I suppose, the human feet and the goat hooves that Trollocs have. And he seems a bit worried because Trollocs can run for faster and longer than horses.
Yeah. And I just noticed that, Matt and Perrin, they're avoiding Rand because of all the things he said to them.
Oh, yeah.
That's still going on. They're still pissed at him because he was an asshole to them before he left, and he's wearing this fancy coat, and he's trying to apologize, but they want nothing to do with him.
Well, Matt seems to be leading the way with the grudge.
Yeah, Matt's pretty pissed.
Perrin seems Perrin's always a little more even-keeled.
He's a little more understanding, I think.
Yeah.
And certainly when they realize he's the Dragon Reborn, Perrin comes to a understanding much faster than Matt does.
Yeah. Right, and Uno notes the Trolloc prince, and Ingtar just says, he points them out to Ingtar, and Ingtar just says, this is what we were talking about. We will catch them, Ingtar said grimly. Our horses, my lord, this is Uno talking. Does no good to ride them into the bloody ground before we do catch up, my lord. Even if they do kill their horses, bloody Trollocs can keep going longer than horses. We will catch them. Mount, Uno. Uno looked at Rand with his one eye, then shrugged and climbed up into his saddle. He wants Rand to object.
Because it's a really obvious thing.
Yeah, he wants Rand to agree with him, but Rand just kind of doesn't do anything.
No, well, and like I said, he doesn't know he's second in command.
Yeah.
At this point. But that is Uno's look of that's a dumb command. Are you going to say anything about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the obvious, he's expecting it, but it doesn't happen.
And Rand thinks it's because Uno thinks he's Lord, but it's really because Uno knows he's second in command.
Oh, right.
I think that's it. I think Ingtar says it's because he wears a heron mark blade, but I think it's all sort of wrapped together, and he thinks he's a Lord, he thinks he's a heron mark blade master, and he thinks he's second in command.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have this highlighted right after that. Why did he look at me that way, Rand wondered. And you pretty much just summed it up. And Rand, at this point, basically is a lord. I mean, he's in command of these men, or almost in command of these men. And he's even got the rumors going around Faldara because he has the prefix on his last name, Al, A-L.
And he was running through the women's apartments with the sword drawn, and
yeah,
they were talking about him. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff going on. What exactly makes a lord? You know, that's an interesting question. Is it by birth? Is it money? Is it bearing?
All those things?
Right.
Well, not necessarily birth, because you can be made a lord.
But you can also be born a lord.
It's basically someone powerful has to say that you're a lord, and that's it. Nothing else is really that important. And
I guess
they more or less have, the powerful people. Because in a second, Ingtar says, maybe at the end of this chapter, Ingtar says, Agelmar and Moraine pulled aside Ingtar and Uno? Was it Uno?
Uno was in the room, yeah.
And told them that...
I think he was in the room.
Told Ingtar and Uno that Rand would be second in command.
Well, I mean, yeah, Agelmar was there with Moraine pulling the strings. And yeah, I mean, I guess if an Aes Sedai says, yeah, this is an important person, that makes you a lord.
Yeah.
But it's not a hard line. People go across it all the time. And like we see the Queen of, I want to say Altara, Julian's honey.
Oh.
She ends, she is born, she's a queen in the beginning of the series, and she quickly becomes a commoner.
In all but name, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's a commoner. No one thinks she's noble. Amathera. But, my lord's just a title and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think Kelsey's right. That's why everybody starts just deferring to that because, better wrong that he is a lord than wrong that he isn't.
And he looks like a lord.
Right. And Moraine did that on purpose, which is another thing that the chapter itself touches on, but Moraine has set him up to... we forgot to mention before, the Amerlin seat herself had a personal meeting with Rand al'Thor.
Right.
And everyone knows.
Right.
And they were in there for a while.
Yeah.
But, what's that all about?
But it's just funny to watch, like, Matt and Perrin, from their perspective. Rand's not a lord. He's a shepherd.
Yeah.
He births ewes.
He's
mucks
wearing
out
this
stalls.
coat that's like probably a month of a common soldier's salary or something. And
I feel like older farmers aren't necessarily going to look like lords because the farming work breaks down. But as a teenager, you just look like a strong teenager.
The cat symbol.
Yeah. And then Cat Crosses the Courtyard definitely had something to do with it. When you strut across the courtyard and everyone's...
He's being trained personally by the King of Malkier.
Right.
This is kind of a big deal.
Right. I didn't even think about that.
I didn't think of it either until I thought about Cat Crosses the Courtyard.
He's literally the apprentice of the king, of their lost king.
Yeah.
Crazy. Perrin keeps muttering about something worse, which we know is Fane.
Yeah. And that's mentioned over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ingtar finally lets up here.
Well, do you want to talk about, we know why he's so driven. He's trying to get that horn.
I'm not sure what's going on in his head here. I was wondering that. He seems driven, and he seems inspired by Suwan's words, but Snakes and Foxes has got it here. I really don't believe he changes his thinking. Ingtar changes his thinking until after the Portal Stones.
I agree with that. I think there may be a little bit of guilt coming in because of the assassin.
Yeah.
I think that, because he does say, I didn't know who she was trying to kill. Like, he's let he let the gray man in. I think he does feel bad about that. I think it's the beginning of some of the regret. I do still think he's, being a dark friend.
Yeah. Or maybe he's just confused at this point.
Possibly. I mean, it's entirely possible that the reason he's driving the horses so hard is because he wants to lame them, make it harder for them to catch it. But that doesn't seem to be his motivation. He seems to be honestly just wanting to catch up and get the horn with all of his He's so desperate that he's doing things poorly.
Yeah. Something's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, even Ingtar had to realize that the horses could not keep on as they were going. Then they trotted, leading their horses, uphill and down, for a mile, then mounted and rode again. Then it was down again and trot. Trot a mile, trot, then ride. And they do this for a long time. I noted that Loyal really likes it. Running alongside the horses.
Well, that's really where endurance bipedal movement can outpace the four-legged horses, is because using two legs is way more efficient. And Loyal's so tall that each one of his strides eats up a lot of distance.
He tells Rand that he once outran a horse in a race.
And I have no doubt about that.
I mean, he's 12 feet tall, or 10 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
Approximately.
Well, yeah. Well, we said Rand was 7 and Loyal's half again. So 3, 10, 11 feet.
Ish, yeah.
So yeah, I don't think that he would have any problem outrunning a horse, especially over an endurance run like this, where the horses have to slow down.
We know that Trollocs can, and they're smaller than Loyal.
I thought Trollocs were actually just a little bit bigger than Ogier, because they were the same height, and the Trollocs are a little bit thicker.
Oh, I always thought of them as a little smaller.
Maybe a little shorter. But I see them described as about the same height and stockier.
Fair enough.
But they're less skilled, and they don't have the bark-like skin, and they don't seem to have some of the strength.
Yeah.
Basically, the Ogier seem to have the strength of a tree when they're fighting. They've got they're Ents. I know the alternating between the ride for a while, jog for a while, walk for a while is a really common way. That's like a frequent technique that's used for long distance horse riding.
Totally.
That's not something that's like unique to this series or anything like that. I've seen it in a bunch of other series.
Read about I think it was the Sioux natives did when they eventually had horses. I read about this technique where they would run alongside their horse and just like hold the saddle, and you can like push a little, and by holding the saddle, you don't put almost any strain on the horse, but you take a little off yourself, and you can just run forever by like holding the, I don't know what the fuck you call that thing.
The pommel?
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 Is that right? So you can run alongside and kind of like take these really long leaps by holding the horse but not actually sitting on it. Anywho.
It's got to be a really efficient way to make use of the horse's strength. Because then they don't have to carry you, which is probably where a lot of the effort comes in.
Oh, yeah. Just makes the work way harder. And here I noted, Rand says, Massima acts like he hates me, and I don't understand it. Massima served 3 years in the Eastern Marches, Ingtar said, at Ankar Dale, against the Aiel. He stirred his stew with a spoon, frowning. I asked no questions, mind. But if Lan Daishan and Moraine Sedai want to say you are from Andor, from the Two Rivers, then you are. But Massima can't get the look of the Aiel out of his head. And when he sees you, he shrugged, I ask no questions. So I thought this was kind of interesting because Ingtar says this several times, I think, where he says something along the lines of, if Moraine Sedai says you're from Andor, then you're from friggin' Andor. Like, I don't want to know
even
what's
though
going
you
on.
Look like you're from the goddamn waste.
Nobody, basically, even Ingtar doesn't believe that he's from Caemlyn anywhere.
He looks like an Aiel savage.
Yeah.
And these folks have all fought like Aiel. They are very familiar with the blood snow.
But Ingtar's just like, whatever. Sure, he's an Andoran, yeah.
He's an Andoran from the country.
Looks like one too.
Who acts, dresses, and like a lord, and carries a heron marked sword, and is being trained by the king of Malkier. And yeah, I don't believe you.
Right, you're a shepherd. Good story.
Great.
But I wouldn't want to get involved either.
Yeah.
You don't tell people like that they're lying.
I did know one of the other things that Ingtar said to him is Moraine saw you're packing herself.
Yeah.
Moraine is manipulating Rand. She's making sure he's in the nice jackets.
Sure.
This is, even though she isn't interacting with him, she is controlling his movements expertly.
But we talked about this in the last chapter, or the one before it, where Moraine's plan is to send Rand with Ingtar, make Rand second in command. They catch Fane and the Dark Friends, get the horn, bring it to Ilion. Right when the great hunt for the horn is being kicked off in Ilion, Rand shows up. He's a hero, wearing his coat with the dragon banner. With any luck, he proclaims himself. Bam. He's not just a hero. He has a whole great army behind him, a friggin' navy. He's set and ready to go to uniting all the lands of the Westlands. And it's happening. It's happening, and it's totally out of Rand's control. Which is why the only reason Moraine took all his clothes away, and now he has to go around in these fancy coats. He even looks like he's above Ingtar. Ingtar looks like a soldier. He looks like, a high-ranking soldier, but he's a soldier. Rand is something else.
Well, and the only reason that Moraine's plan didn't work is because Fane escaped. Otherwise, Rand would be doing exactly what she wanted.
Yeah.
Here's a quote from Matt saying, "Yeah, he's from the Two Rivers," Matt said scornfully. "I grew up with him, though you'd never know it now. You put this Aiel nonsense in his head on top of what's there already, and Light knows what we'll have. An Aiel Lord, maybe."
Maybe.
Like, maybe.
Yeah, wait a book or two, Matt.
Perhaps a Lord of the Dawn? Early morning? Lord of the
Morning?
Lord of the Morning, yeah, an Aiel Lord. Kara Karn. So, yeah, clearly, again, just great foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Over and over again, the character's like, yeah, right, you'll be a blacksmith king, you'll be an Aiel Lord, you'll be... It's like, yeah, we will be.
Yep.
Yep.
King of the Blacksmiths. Now we see Ingtar here kind of get into describing the Aiel, and he actually does a really good, fair job. I don't know if you want to get into this at all.
I read through it. I didn't highlight any of it because I think it's a great description of the Aiel, but there's nothing in it that I really want to go into other than the research I've been doing is that one of the few things that Jordan really nailed down early in the process of writing the series was the Aiel. Like they were...
Yeah, they're described to a T here.
Yeah, and they were established apparently like long before his first draft. The Aiel and their culture has been steady throughout his writing process, which makes sense that he's able to give a very detailed description here before we ever meet them. And it turns out to be almost 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Whereas some of his early descriptions, they're right, but maybe things change a little bit as we get to meet them. But
yeah,
I think they really, like the Sharans and the Sea Folk, I think, are a little... He had some intentions for them that didn't end up coming to fruition.
They play a smaller part.
They do.
I did think it was interesting, although Ingtar has already shown that he knows history very well, but I thought it was interesting that here Ingtar says... They herd cattle and goats where you and I would die of thirst before the day was done. They dig their villages into huge rock spires out in the waste. They've been there since the breaking, near enough. Arthur Hawkwing tried to dig them out and was bloodied, the only major defeats he ever suffered. And he's right.
Yeah.
It was the only major defeat Hawkwing ever suffered.
You could say when he attacked the White Tower, he suffered a defeat there.
Well, he didn't win,
right.
But he also didn't lose.
Yeah. He besieged them and then withdrew. Yeah.
But apparently the Aiel, I couldn't find any actual information on it other than what Ingtar says here, way back when we did the Third Age episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that Hawkwing actually suffered any real defeats in battle. From what I could glean, basically the Aiel just refused to engage him. Or they kind of antagonized him just enough so that he would continue chasing them out into the desert.
Yeah, the cut and run,
yeah,
guerrilla warfare type attacks where,
Come get us.
Yeah, I'm sure Arthur Hawkwing never lost a battle against the Aiel because he never fought a battle against the Aiel. He was just constantly harassed.
Let the desert kill him. All those horses.
Yeah.
Idiots.
It's like when the Russians come out of Russia and attack you. Don't follow them back into Russia in the winter. It's not a good idea. Don't follow the Aiel into the desert. Not a good idea.
People have tried. Doesn't work.
There's a quote here I want to talk about. Except for peddlers and gleemen, Aiel divide the world in two. Aiel and enemies. They changed that for the Kyrian 500 years ago. For some reason, no one but an Aiel could understand. But I do not think they will ever do so again. So I just wanted to run down, like, peddlers obviously let in because they want to trade, gleemen because they love stories. But then the Kyrian used to be friends. They used to allow the Kyrian to come in, and that has to do with the fact that they discovered that the ancestors of the Kyrian gave them water during the breaking and provided them with shelter during the breaking. And so that was the whole reason that they got Avienda Dor, is they gave the Kyrians a cutting because of the favors the Kyrian did for the Aiel during the breaking. And then, of course, when Layman cut it down, that changed everything.
Shade and water.
But it was 500 years ago they discovered that the people of Kyrian were the ones who aided them, and that's why they went from being enemies to being friends. Mm-hmm. And then they went back to enemies when Laman, during Laman's sin. Yeah.
They come across another camp here, the second one. And I just kind of noted Matt saying, I wonder what dark friends eat. Doesn't look like a sheep bone or a cow. Murder was done here, Hurin said mournfully. He scrubbed his nose with a kerchief. Worse than murder. There were Trollocs here, Ingtar said, looking straight at Matt. I suppose they got hungry, and the dark friends were handy. Matt dropped the blackened bone. He looked as if he were going to be sick.
Human bones.
Yeah.
Dem bones, dem bones. One thing I want to talk about before that is the trail still led south, Huron said, until 2 hours after the sun rose.
This happens right there. They're not going south any longer, my lord, Huron said. That took everyone's attention. He pointed back to the northeast. Maybe they've decided to break for the blade after all. Go around us.
And then a little more than an hour later, though, Huron drew rein. They changed again, my lord, south again, and they killed someone else here. So what's going on there, right? You've got Thane, who wants to go south.
Right.
And you've got the Murdral, who wants to go north to the Blight.
To Shale Ghul. So you've got these two competing factors. And in the morning, Thane wakes up, and he's still not in control. He's still sort of... His Moradin and Thane personas aren't fully merged yet. And he's still struggling. And so every morning he wakes up not in control. And we see that when we see from his perspective in a bit here.
Right.
Where Thane kind of describes it.
And so that's when they're heading towards the Blight.
For some reason during the day he's not in control, and at night he is.
I thought it was just when he wakes up in the morning he's not in control. And then over time he over
that's
an
the way
hour
he
or two,
puts it.
Yeah. He's able to sort of gain power and force the Murdral to do what he wants.
My little theory is that him getting the dagger has kind of put everything together.
Yeah, absolutely. That before there was the separation between Thane and Moradin and the dagger. And with all those three inhabiting the same body, he's actually sort of merging together and creating a final Mordeith.
Yeah.
Persona that's a combination of the two. And when he actually merges together into that Mordeith figure, he gains the ability to kill the Murdral.
Right.
But what's happening here is every morning they get up, the Murdral takes charge, heads back to the Blight. An hour or two later, he gains enough power that he's able to take control of the party and turn them south again.
We see that repeating over and over. The day was the same as the day before had been. Another change in direction. Next day was the same. Changes in directions, murders and all. And the next.
I wonder if Thane... There's a murder whenever Thane changes direction.
I noticed that.
Do you think he's gaining power from the murders?
Doesn't he absorb souls?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, Mashadar does. And he's got Mashadar as part of him. So maybe he is killing them. But, he's bashing their heads in.
I don't know why. I don't know what the point is. He's insane, and when he kind of wakes up and comes into his power, he just kills someone?
I was thinking perhaps the killing of someone was a boost to his power, and that allows him to take control.
Yeah, Snakes and Foxes says the humans were slowing him down, and they're also food for the Trollocs.
That's the humans that the regular people that they capture, and they don't have any of them yet. At this point, I think it's just Dark Friends and Trollocs and horses.
Yeah, I guess so. Don't they eat a couple of Dark Friends too? I think they do.
Yeah, that's why they're eating Dark Friends, because they don't have any regular people with them. And I don't non-Dark Friends.
Funny, not funny. I'm just laughing. Whatever we have on hand to snack on. Dark Friends, regular people.
Yeah. It's not until later that he picks up a bunch of people from the villages.
Right.
And that's when they start to slow him down, and he has the Trollocs slaughter them all.
Which is pretty much when they get to this point.
Right.
So the next thing I have is, and so they came to the River Aranon, where they're, I guess, heading south more than they're heading north. They're kind of zigzagging down.
They're only heading north for an hour or two each day, and then Fane takes over and puts them south. So I think they're spending most of their day heading south.
We open up here with Rand describing the village, which is not too interesting. He says it could not be properly called a village at all, to Rand's mind. He sat his horse among the trees, peering up at half a dozen small houses, with wood-shingled roofs and eaves almost to the ground, on a hilltop there overlooking the river, beneath the morning sun. Few people pass this way.
This town doesn't even get a name, does it?
No.
It's just a nameless town on the River Aranon.
Yeah, it's a nameless village. With a ferry, which I noticed the book says the ferry sat snugged against the other side. And I perceive that as, if Fane really didn't want to be followed, he'd have cut that thing free. He wants Rand to follow him.
I think so, yeah. Well, that's the whole point. We'll meet again on Toman's Head.
If I were being chased and I crossed a ferry like that, the first thing I do would cut it. Even if I was staring at the other guy across the river, I would cut that rope.
But not if you were leading him on the chase.
No, not if I wanted him to continue chasing
Right.
me. But if I wanted to get away, I'd cut that thing. It'd take you all day to get across that river. Probably lose horses or people too. It seems like a swift, wide river. It would be tough to cross.
Yeah.
Just swimming.
With all their equipment and stuff. So basically, this place is totally empty because the Dark Friends and the Trollocs have taken all the people as snacks.
Yeah.
It's basically fast food.
Fast food. Next thing I have is when they come up to the edge of the village. I don't like the smell of this place, Perrin muttered, as they came among the houses. Hurin gave him a look, and he stared back until Hurin dropped his eyes. It smells wrong.
So later when Perrin sort of takes the lead by following the wolves, a lot of that is based around the fact that they're like, oh yeah, a lot of them noticed you were smelling things. So we're just going to say that you...
Oh yeah, Ingtar says, the men were making jokes about your delicate nose, or whatever it was.
Right, and I think it's stuff like this where he's like, this place smells wrong.
And he tells Ingtar, he's like, listen, I'm a wolf brother, and Ingtar's like, yeah, I've heard of that. Okay. Yeah. If anyone asks, you're a sniffer. He was like, the men will believe it.
I wonder if Ingtar had heard of...
Elias,
thank you. Because Ingtar knows... Lan knows Elias.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty short degree of separation.
Yeah, Ingtar mentions that he's heard of that sort of thing before.
I was wondering if the odd smell, the something's wrong, is perhaps Fane used one of his tricks?
Yeah, I just perceived it as either Fane himself or the dagger, the corruption. Because Hurin, I think it's Hurin that says, I've never smelled anything like this before. Right, he says other things like, there was violence done, but no killing, but I've never smelled anything like this. Violence, my lord? Yes. Killing? No. Or not exactly. He glanced sideways at Perrin. I've never smelled anything exactly like it before, my lord, but there was hurting done.
So it's like how Fane, there's a boy in... Oh gosh, there's a house he takes over, and there's a young boy, and he gets so angry, and he just like brushes his face and basically gives the kid a seizure. And like...
With the dagger?
No, just with his hands.
Oh.
So he sort of has this ability to... He has a few abilities not related to the dagger. He's able to conjure up dead people, the images of dead people, which will be relevant here in a second. He's able to make people hurt. He's able to give them pain. A few other little tricks that he has. And he says he's not even sure how he does it. He just does it. So I think what Huron is smelling is one of those tricks where probably one of the Dark Friends, probably some of the villagers were tortured basically by Fane and his tricks. And that's why he hasn't smelled anything like it, is because it's something that's very different than anything that's ever existed before.
Different than regular torture. But right before Huron says that, Uno sees the woman in the window.
Yeah. And I don't think we necessarily have to speculate on who that woman is.
It's Celine. Well, I'm saying Celine, but it's Lanfear as Celine in the white dress.
I mean, Lanfear wears a white dress all the time.
Yeah. I just think of her as Celine because that's how she introduces herself in this section.
It's funny. I don't think of her as Celine ever. Like, she's Lanfear 100%, and that Celine, it's, like, I don't ever think of her as the fat girl in the whatever her name is in the
oh right, she
in the peddlers in the waist. Kylie
sounds right.
So I mean, like, I don't think of her as that name. I don't think of her as Celine. She's Lanfear to me, even though I guess Rand thinks of her as Celine for a long time, because he sort of falls in love with Celine. Not in love, but in lust.
Yeah.
And then
he doesn't. Kelsey, 18-year-old boys are never smart.
No.
I was one once. It's it's a bad scene. I don't think she would have had to use compulsion. Like, we know she's beautiful. I think that's plenty. I think that's really...
Do breasts count as compulsion?
Maybe. Just being flirty with a teenage boy is like, you don't need magic.
No. And literally being like the most attractive person that anyone has ever seen. Like, over and over and over and over and over again.
She's described that way.
She's described as the most beautiful person ever. Her and not Barrelon.
Is it Grandal?
Oh, Grandal's just sultry. I don't think she's that gorgeous. She's just sexy.
Berlane.
Barrelon is a city. Berlane is a character. But yeah, Berlane, I think, is the only other one who's described in a similar fashion. Her and Galad. So, he runs up, checks the house, doesn't see her, and Matt's like, you're looking at curtains.
Yeah.
Curtains. He's jumping at bloody curtains.
I think he even says, I thought I saw her for a second, but then she was just gone, which I presume is true power traveling.
I thought it was just Mask of Mirrors.
It could be. She could just disappear.
I don't think Lanfear uses the true... I don't know if we ever see her use the true power.
I don't know. But I just perceived it that way because of the way she just disappears. And that's what true power traveling looks like. It just kind of the air, it just looks hot, and then a person disappears.
But I think it's more likely that she's just following them around and making herself invisible. That's the whole thing. Like, Rand saw eyes on him the whole time, and every time he saw the eyes on him, he was totally not seeing somebody. I don't think she was true power traveling. I think she was using a mask of mirrors to be invisible, and I think that's what she does here. Yeah, it is funny. She never uses the true power, even though she was the one who bored the hole to get to the true power.
Well, isn't she the one that says you have to be crazy to use it?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm
not sure either. But
yeah. I thought that was Moghedian. She's such a coward. She wouldn't use it.
Could be right. After that, the party crosses the river. Ingtar sends a couple of guys first to check to make sure there's not an ambush waiting for them, but there isn't. But there is something waiting for them. I did note, and I liked this, that Perrin says, "This is how we left home," as he's riding across with Rand. I think Matt is there with them. Yeah, he is. At Terran Ferry, the ferryman's boots clunking on the deck, and the water gurgling around the ferry. This is how we left. It will be worse this time. How can it get worse? Rand asked. Perrin did not answer. He searched the far bank. His golden eyes almost seemed to shine, but not with eagerness. After a minute, Matt asked again, "How can it be worse?" "It will be. I can smell it," was all Perrin would say.
Yeah, there's that smelling again, so that's the second time Huron's noticed that he's been a smeller. Why do you think Matt hesitates to get on the ferry?
Because he's jumpy?
Just wondering if there's a point that, like, he hesitates until it's almost... It's like, I have to get it at some point, I guess. Is he just like, he doesn't want to go on this adventure, but knows the only way to get the dagger back is to go?
Maybe. I was wondering if you were going to say it has something to do with the dagger and the dagger's effect on him and deep water. I don't think it's that, but...
Just the way, like, Fades can't cross running water?
Yeah. I don't know if we ever see that from Mordith, but all the evil creatures seem to have an aversion. And so they get off the ferry and approach the big stone oak that I think it was Reagan and another soldier tell them is on the other side. And
Uno. Those are the two that swim across.
At first, Rand thought the figures hanging by their arms from the thick gray rims of the stone oak were scarecrows, crimson scarecrows. Then he recognized the two faces, Chengu and Nidao.
So these are the two dark friends corrupted by Fane. I'm coming more and more to the point that they were dark friends beforehand.
But they were also corrupted by Fane, so...
Right.
Double dark friends. Double fudge dark friends.
I'm guessing they may have been the ones who killed the guards at the gate, slit the throats. That's sort of the conclusion I've come to. It was either them or Ingtar.
That makes the most sense. Otherwise, Hurin would smell Ingtar.
Right.
Or would smell it on Ingtar.
I think that's, after much going round and round in the last episode, I think that's the conclusion that I finally decided on. And then once they were let in, the Gray Man came in. I'm still not sure how the Trollocs got in. That's my only little bit of, I don't know who let them in. I haven't figured that one out. So, and these two got skinned, which is, that's why they look like crimson figures, is they're basically, they don't have any skin on them. They're just bloody.
Eyes staring, teeth bared in a rictus of pain. They had lived a long time after it began. Perrin made a sound in his throat, nearly a growl. As bad as I've ever seen, my lord, Hurin said faintly. As bad as ever I've smelled, excepting the dungeon at Faldara, where a bunch of dudes were literally ripped apart, piece by piece, by Trollocs, and possibly Fane, too.
Possibly Fane, but I bet he was writing a poem on the wall.
Yeah, I think he was. I think
or the Murdral was. That's, again, another thing. We haven't fully settled whether it was him or the Murdral.
Yeah, it surprises me that Fane would know Trolloc scripts, but, I mean, Mordith might. So, I don't know. I can't say. Frantically, Rand sought the void, because he's about to puke. The queasiness pulsed in the void with him, though. Not outside, for once, but inside. And he's surprised by that, because he thinks he's going to escape his nausea by escaping into the void, but what he finds is tainted side in, which makes him nauseous. And it's almost as bad.
I'm sorry, I'm still thinking about the
it's okay.
The Trollocs and the... All right, here's my sequence of events.
Okay.
Ingtar lets in the Gray Man. Oh, no, that doesn't work either. Damn it, no. I cannot make that work in my head.
Yeah. Ingtar lets out Fane.
Yeah. Ingtar lets in the Gray Man.
Well, what if it's Ingtar lets out Fane, Fane murders the guards, opens the door, lets in the Gray Man and the Trollocs?
But then why would they go back down to the jail?
Ah, damn it.
Right? So Ingtar lets in the Gray Man, goes away. Gray Man kills the gate guards.
The Gray Man could be waiting there for any period, any given amount of time.
Yeah, a fair amount of time.
Nobody would notice it.
So the Gray Man kills the gate guards. In come the Trollocs. That way Ingtar didn't let the Trollocs in, but the Gray Man does.
That makes so much better sense because both of their throats were slit.
And
how do you...
Gray Man used knives.
Yeah. But, I mean, how could he sneak up on two guards? Like, what could do that?
Oh, if they weren't noticed.
Only if you're a Gray Man.
That's perfect. That's a good point. Two guards throats slit must be a Gray Man. So Ingtar lets the Gray Man in. The Gray Man kills the gate guards, lets the Trollocs in, and the Murdral.
But Ingtar has to open the door for the Trollocs.
Yeah, and so then Ingtar heads down, lets the Trollocs and the Murdral in, opens the gate for Fane.
And probably just leaves.
And they end up attacking Egwene and Matt, knocking them unconscious. Fane takes the dagger from Matt, and then all the Dark Friends, they go as a group with the dagger to go steal the horn, grab the horn, and flee.
All while a bunch of other Trollocs are attacking.
Exactly.
That's just a distraction.
Right. So they bury Changu and Nidao in the typical Shinaran way, which is the way I want to be buried if I'm not burned.
Me too.
Don't give me a coffin. Don't put a bunch of clothes on me. Don't put me in a tuxedo.
I always thought a sky burial would be appropriate. Have you ever heard of that? It's like I think some Native Americans did it, and the early Tibetan cultures did it, where you pretty much just drag your loved ones out like to the top of the mountain and leave them there.
And they get eaten?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just go back to the earth that way.
That'd be fine with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we had enough wild animals just to feed. Toss me to the dogs. Help, throw me to the pigs.
Also, give away my organs because I'm not using them.
Oh, yeah.
Don't need those anymore.
If you can use them, I'm not.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
If they're any good anymore, I haven't been that kind to them.
Yeah, don't take my liver.
And we see Loyal give a nice description of Shinaran burial ritual. But all I highlighted was Loyal explaining. Rand is shocked that they're just throwing the soldiers into a hole. He's like, that's what they do? Like, that's it? And Loyal says, Shinarans believe we all came from the earth and must return to the earth. They never use coffins or shrouds, and the bodies are never clothed. The earth must hold the body. And then Rand seems to kind of get it after Loyal describes some more. But
I like this quote. No matter what Ingtar says, Rand, there cannot be much doubt that Changu and Nidao slew the guards at the Dog Gate and let the Dark Friends into the keep. It had to be they who were responsible for all of it. And that's Loyal saying that. And I just thought that was interesting that no matter what Ingtar says, so Ingtar is denying that Changu and Nidao killed the gate guards, which makes sense if he knows it was the Gray Man.
Which makes sense if who knew that it was.
So if Ingtar knows that the Gray Man killed the gate guards, he would deny that Changu and Nidao were the ones who did it, even though they are Dark Friends.
Yeah.
And the only way he could know that is if either A, he killed them, or he knows the Gray Man did it.
Yeah. I don't know about those two. They could have just been corrupted by fame. But Ingtar passes it off saying they saved Agelmar at some battle recently.
Tarwin's Gap.
Yeah. That's it.
The end of Eye of the World. So,
even if the other soldiers are like, yeah, okay, we can bury them properly.
Right. So it's possible they were not Dark Friends before Fane got to them. Whenever they say the last embrace of the mother, what they're referring to is being dumped in a hole.
Yeah.
That's the mother is earth, and the embrace is being buried in the earth. So the last embrace is literally being buried.
Yeah.
Naked. They mention this monument.
Yeah, which I think is another thing I mentioned in the Third Age episode. I think it was the Third Age episode.
And so this monument, isn't it built right where the portal stone is? I think they're in the same location. Because we see Rand camp out at a hill, and it's described as a hill. Or, no, I take it back, because they come across the monument in the portal stone world after they've been traveling for a while.
Right.
So I take that back.
I think it's a
place.
bit further south.
Yeah.
Ingtar gives them all a little history lesson on it. But basically, it's the monument that Arthur Hawkwing built after a flood of Trollocs and Myrddraal came down through Tarwin's Gap and attacked Hawkwing's empire. Apparently, the battle lasted for 6 days, and then the Trollocs were repelled.
And then once Arthur Hawkwing fell, his heirs just tore it all down.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want it to stand as a monument to him.
We get this little history lesson from Ingtar and Loyal. Matt asks what happens to all those nations. Loyal says they couldn't hold together. But what I have highlighted is Ingtar's little speech here, which I'll read unless you want to touch on anything before that. It was quite a quarry, Harad Dakar. For almost 100 years, Ingtar said bitterly. The people left finally, and then the city was hauled away, stone by stone, all faded away. And what is not gone is fading. Everything, everywhere, fading. There is hardly a nation that truly controls the land it claims on a map, and there is hardly a land that claims today on a map what it did even 100 years ago. When the War of the 100 Years ended, a man rode from one nation into another, without end, from the Blight to the Sea of Storms, Now we can ride through wilderness claimed by no nation, for almost the whole of the land. We in the borderlands have our battle with the blight to keep us strong and whole. Perhaps they did not have what they needed to keep them strong. You say they failed, Builder? Yes, they failed. And what nation standing whole today will fail tomorrow? We are being swept away, humankind. Swept away like flotsam on a flood. How long until there is nothing left but the borderlands? How long before we, too, go under, and there is nothing left but Trollocs and Myrddraal all the way to the Sea of Storms? There was a shocked silence. Not even Matt broke it. Ingtar rode lost in his own dark thoughts. And that just gives us a lot of interesting perspective on what's going on in Ingtar's head and why he became a Dark Friend in the first place, because he's in this hopeless place in his mind. And really, it's a pretty logical place to be where, you know, if you understand history and you see this slow decline of civilization, everything slowly falling apart since the time of Arthur Hawkwing, which was 1,000 years ago?
Oh, no, 2,000. Because 1,000 years ago was the Trolloc Wars.
That would be like if the peak of our technology and civilization happened in the time of Christ, and we now had the technology that they had in the time of the Bible now. Like if it was reverse. How depressing is that?
That's pretty depressing.
And a slow decline over so long. I see where he's coming from. He's like, it's hopeless. Like eventually, this is all going to fall apart.
I'm glad we don't live in a society in decline. That would be depressing. Anyway.
Oprah for president. Cut that.
That is really his philosophy. That's why he's turned to the Dark One. He thinks that it's just inevitable. They do have Grohl running around Shan-Chan now,
but they're tamed, right? Or to whatever degree.
Oh, I assume they're not wild.
Aren't they? Yeah, I think they're used as like combat animals or something like that. Are they one of the ones that are ridden?
They ride the Grohl. Yeah.
There's a few.
That, and then the ones that like flow like cats with the extra legs. They're like scaled bronze cats. Oh
yeah, I always imagine them as giant Komodo dragons, basically. Sorry, I don't know.
And then you got the Rockin' and the Toe-Rockin' and the flying creatures,
which are pterodactyls, basically. That's how I imagine them.
I mean, I think the fantasy term is worm. Don't they have like wings but no arms? Are they four-legged?
There's a lot. There's more than when I was going through it. I was doing show notes for something or other recently. There are quite a few different Shan-Chan tamed creatures that are not in Ramland. Like more than half a dozen.
And then, of course, shredded are basically elephants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those were probably native to Shan-Chan.
Yeah.
Or the continent there.
But a lot of these other animals were pulled through the Portal Stone worlds. I don't think they were initially native to Shan-Chan.
No. Oh yeah, Coral, or one of them also. Good memory, snakes and foxes.
Or good Googling skills.
Yeah, either one.
See, it's nice. I don't have to look up the wiki. I just yell at Discord and they look it up for me. It's wonderful. Thank you, snakes and foxes.
Yeah, they come up on another village.
Yeah.
Which is much the same as before. It's totally abandoned. We know...
He talks a little bit about the fact that this isn't a protected territory, that Kyrian has abandoned it, and the Borderlanders have no desire or ability to protect it.
So it's kind of in between Kyrian and Shinar, and nobody wants it. So they're just these lone, hardy farmers out in the middle of nowhere in an unclaimed wilderness.
Just sort of falling between the cracks. And I'm guessing places like this is where a lot of people have disappeared to through the Trolloc raids. That basically all the Fade's swords, a lot of the food that the Trollocs eat comes from what used to be a thriving, one of the reasons that all these nations are failing is because they're being depopulated by the Trollocs on the Borderlands.
Yeah. And this kind of touches on the decline of the civilizations again. That this land was once claimed, and there are still people there, but now no nation has the strength to actually protect it. It's just...
I mean, we've been losing Aes Sedai. Their power is in decline.
Yeah. So they enter this village and start searching houses. We know that Uno sees... We know through hindsight. Uno says it later, but not now. We don't see it now. But we know that Uno sees Lanfear again in this village. He mentions it later.
Yeah.
In the town with the fairy.
Yes.
He sees her. And now again here. Rand walks into this room, and I'll read just this one part. Inside was a tiny room, or had been. The table was set for a meal. Ladderback chairs gathered around, some plates already served. A few flies buffed above bowls of turnips and peas, and more curled on a cold roast, sitting in its own congealed grease. There was a slice half carved from the roast, the fork still standing, stuck in the meat, and the carving knife lying partway in the platter as if dropped. Rand stepped inside. Blink. A smiling, bald-headed man in rough clothes laid a slice of meat on a plate. And basically it goes on to describe this family scene, which seems pretty clearly to be what happened when the Trollocs attacked this village. There's a little family in there with quite a few children. Suddenly another girl screamed, pointing out the door to the street. The man dropped the carving knife and whirled. Then he screamed too, face-tight with horror, and snatched up a child. The woman grabbed another, and motioned desperately to the others, her mouth working frantically, silently. They all scrabbled toward a door in the back of the room. The door burst open, and blink. Rand could not move. The flies buzzing over the table sounded louder. His breath made a cloud in front of his mouth. Blink, and then the scene happens again.
Mm-hmm.
Blink. Rand struggled, but his muscles seemed frozen. The room was colder. He wanted to shiver, but he could not move even that much. Flies crawled all over the table. He groped for the void. The sour light was there, but he did not care. He had to blink, and the scene repeats. He's seeing the past.
He's caught in a loop.
What is this?
3 possibilities.
Okay.
From least likely to most likely.
Okay.
Least likely, Lanfear left a weave for him to fuck with him a little bit, to try and force him to channel, to break free. It's not really her style, and the scene doesn't really lend itself to something she would do.
Yeah.
Possible, but I don't think that's what's happening.
What's next likely?
Next likely, Bubble of Evil.
Okay.
Just weird shit happens with bubbles of evil. You know, whenever something unexpected happens, figures jump out of playing cards, mirrors break into 1,000 pieces, a man turns into, living lava.
He lives
bugs.
An awful point in the past that happened a few hours ago over and over.
Mm-hmm. Bugs come crawling out of someone's skin.
Yeah.
But most of those seem to be individual events that happen to somebody.
And more physical.
Most likely scenario,
mm-hmm.
Fane left a trap. The reason I think it's most likely is during the last battle, we see one of Fane's powers is to conjure up the dead in order to confuse his enemies and trap them. This is absolutely, I think, one of Fane's tricks. These are dead villagers, and he entirely was basically left this behind as a time loop to try and trap Rand and, uses one of his tricks. He's coming into his own, he's coming into his power, and this is absolutely a trap set by Fane. And the dead people, the flies, the time loop, all fit.
That's perfect. One of the Chosen is telling us, during the Knife of Dreams signing tour, Robert Jordan disclosed that this was a trap set by Pat and Fane. Rand channeled to escape it. Fane exhibits this ability to create illusions from the recent past again in Farmatting.
Yeah.
But also during the last battle.
Mm-hmm. And you remember in Farmatting, what he does is he brings back some of the Ashaman that Rand had killed. So there's a very confusing scene where Rand kills the Ashaman, he goes back to the room, and they're there waiting for him. And that's because Pat and Fane had conjured up dead people for Rand. So that's in Farmatting. And since it's not related to the power, he's able to do that in Farmatting despite the Guardians.
You see, guys, if I were reading this alone, I would have just been like, I don't know what the fuck that was, and I just kept reading. Like, something weird happened, don't know why. And it's a really creepy scene where every time the blink happens and Rand relives this like 60 seconds of the past, there's more flies and like it smells worse and it's colder. It's weird.
It's trying to kill him. I think he's caught in a loop until basically he dies or breaks out.
Yeah, and so it repeats a few times, and eventually the room was freezing, so cold. Flies blackened the table. The walls were a shifting mass of flies. The floor, the ceiling, black with them. They crawled on Rand, covering him, crawled over his face, his eyes, into his nose, his mouth. Light, help me, it's cold. The flies buzzed like thunder, cold. It penetrated the void, mocking the emptiness, encasing him in ice. Desperately, he reached for the flickering light. His stomach twisted, but the light was warm. Warm. Hot. He was hot. Suddenly he was tearing at something. And I really like this description. This is probably the first time Rand consciously tries to do something. And I think in all the other cases before this, Rand is like desperate and like begging the light to help him. But in this scene, this is the first time where he enters the void, sees the light and the taint, and reaches through the taint and holds on to. This is the first time he really describes.
I mean, I think desperation's still.
It's definitely a part of it. But I feel like this is the first time he's conscious of what's going on. He doesn't know what he's doing, but knows that he's doing something.
Yeah, he needs to be able to channel.
Suddenly he was tearing at something. He did not know what or how. Cobwebs made of steel, moonbeams carved from stone. They crumbled at his touch, but he knew he had not touched anything. They shriveled and melted with the heat that surged through him. Heat like a forge fire. Heat like the world burning. Heat like it was gone. And there are 6 dead flies laying on the table. He kills the flies, I assume, simultaneously because he's...
Do you think... I thought they were already dead when he walked in.
Could be. I assumed because we know that there's an illusion happening, so it's hard to know what's real and what isn't.
Well, and Fane has illusionary power of the dead, so that's why I assume they're illusionary dead flies.
Oh, weird. Yeah, you're probably right. And it's just like even more creepy that he uses the dead flies. So it's perfect because Fane would.
And we know that in this town, Fane really comes into his own. He comes into his power here, which is why he's able to set a trap for Rand and very soon able to spike a Murdraw.
Yeah. Rand stumbles out of the room. A shout came from the square. They found something, Perrin said, who's just outside. They rush over, and everyone was standing like statues in front of a large building with wide double doors. Rand did not think it could be an inn. There was no sign, for one thing, perhaps a village meeting place. He joined the silent circle and stared along with the rest. I have this like all highlighted. Just say okay, stop if you want me to stop.
I have the next paragraph highlighted.
Yeah.
we keep highlighting the same. You highlight a little more than I do, but the nugget of it is the same.
Should I just go for it and read to the end of the chapter? It's like 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs. Well, I'll read this part.
Yeah, just read this paragraph. I don't think we have to read the whole thing.
There was a man spread-eagled across the doors with thick spikes through wrists and shoulders. More spikes had been driven into his eyes to hold his head up. Dark, dried blood made fans down his cheeks. Scuff marks on the wood behind his boots showed that he had been alive when it was done. When it began, anyway. Rand's breath caught. Not a man. Those black clothes, blacker than black, had never been worn by any human. The wind flapped an end of the cloak, caught behind the body, which it did not always, he knew too well. The wind did not always touch those clothes, but there had never been any eyes in that pale, bloodless face.
Now, I noticed that the cloak moves. Really interesting that a live Murdraw is enough outside the pattern that his cloak doesn't move, but once he's dead, the cloak comes back into the pattern.
The power doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
I think it's just a natural magic of the Murdraw's soul. But if you release the soul, the magic doesn't work anymore.
Well, and I think somehow the Murdraw is a link between the world and the Dark One, and the Dark One is outside of the pattern, and so that's why the cloak doesn't move with the wind.
Yeah, By destroying the body, you destroy the links.
Exactly.
So there's no more power there.
And then it just becomes a regular cloak. Same thing with the horses. I think they probably start out as fairly normal horses, but when they're ridden by Murdral, they're somehow touched by the power of the Dark One.
I'll just read the very last couple sentences. They rode away, leaving the dead Murdral where it hung, the wind stirring its black cloak. Hurin was first beyond the wall, not waiting on Ingtar for a change, but Rand came close behind him.
So just a disturbing image of them riding away from a dead Murdral hanging.
Nailed to a barn door,
Yeah.
or nailed to a big...
And Murdral have been built up as this big evil, and they're still, really other than Baalzamon, the most deadly thing we've encountered.
Yeah, I mean... Trying to think of what else could do that, and the only thing I can think of is like an Ogier with either arm could maybe nail a Murdral to a door.
Yeah.
Like what would actually have the strength? Lan. Okay, Enigma. Yeah, I can't really deny that.
No, I mean, Lan, but I think Lan couldn't hold a Murdral and nail him to a wall. He could kill him with a sword, but he doesn't have the power to hold a Murdral in place.
The sheer strength it would take. Because I see a Murdral like as strong and as fast as Lan, but not as clever.
Or skilled with the sword.
Right. Not as disciplined or smart.
Right. And I guess an Aes Sedai could certainly do it. Just hold him against the wall with power and drive the spikes through. No problem. But other than that, yeah. But yeah, I honestly, I don't think Fane, like I said, he wasn't holding him. Fane doesn't have the physical strength, but he's able to control him with his powers. You know, whether that was controlling his mind or using one of his tricks. I'm not really sure what exactly he did.
Yeah.
Or he may have just commanded the Trollocs to do it. That's the other thing. He may have just told all the Trollocs, hold the Murdral down while I use this hammer and spikes. What are you humming about?
I'm at 13, and this is my stupid pet project over here. I'll post this in a second. Oh, I'm sure I'm forgetting someone.
Well, this 14, you could always get Taim as the 14th. If you need to pull in another one. Well, you left out... Oh, yeah, you got John Michael on there. I was like, it's number 2. I mean, those are everyone you've got on right now.
Yeah, I was just going through the sidebar.
I mean, there was some early, like, Cranky Cast showed up a lot in some of the earlier ones, but I haven't seen him for a while.
They're there now.
Yeah, but he's not listening.
Oh, they don't post a ton.
Yeah. Zenvius, he's done a lot of feedback.
Oh, yeah.
The list. I've seen some of these people once or twice. Oh, and you've got to put John Harrell on there.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He's editing all of our stuff. He's basically...
Lucky number 13.
Yeah. Jonathan Winter shows up a lot. I'd put him on the list, too.
Are those our chosen?
Call Me Hester.
Oh, shit. They have to be in there. Damn, we're going over 14.
I'm looking at the list of people who are offline. Did you get Christini? Yeah, you got Christini.
Yeah.
Call Me Hester. Blocking the New Kid. He's been around a fair amount. So yeah, we're not too much over. We're maybe like 2 or 3. And we got like 16, 17. Noble Fiend, yeah, just John.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm not sure his account is a patron account, though. I think he joined through one of the public.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have to assign him a patron account. Or a patron role. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I went ahead and created a bunch of roles in the Discord channel, and you've all been assigned, if you were a patron, you've been assigned a green title. If obviously you're not a patron and you're just joining the public channel, you're white. Our guests are red, and I'm gold. I also created a mod level, but no one's been assigned that yet. So just in case we have issues with the public being on the channel. But it seems like everyone who's joined has been great.
Yeah. I should probably make a Discord account like just for myself, so in the future we're not posting under the same name.
Yeah,
Like,
the problem is like
spoilers and all.
The issue is I can't like log in with multiple Discord accounts. I can only seem to have the one.
Oh, well, like if you run Watt Spoilers account, I can just run whatever else, just name an account.
Yeah, if you just want like a Patrick Eiler.
Yeah, just so it's not super confusing.
Because then if you're talking to me or you.
Yeah.
Any other bits of news? It's becoming more certain that you will probably be moving in with me at the end of February.
Yeah, or whenever that all happens.
Yeah.
I'm not in like a hurry, like I'm fine in my place, but I'm pretty sure I only have to give 30 days notice. And honestly, the two major bonuses are that I'll save money splitting this place, and then I'll just be here with the recording studio, and we'll just get more done.
Yeah, it'll be nice. We don't have to travel, and we can record whenever we have time.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're thinking about doing it. We're also doing a practice session with Tom on Monday to just see if we can get that going and do a second podcast as well.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of plans. It's been busy.
Yeah, this is going to be a busy week.
Oh yeah, the second podcast. Do you want to talk about that for a while?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be completely different, not fantasy novel or Wheel of Time related in any way. But me and a buddy of mine have been kicking around an idea where we basically view current events through the lens of history. And we're still messing around with the concept. We have been for like a couple months here. But and we're still kicking around names for it. But I think we're either settling on Nothing New or Insider Outsider or Inside Out. Because I'm a DC bureaucrat and has worked for USAID for a long time.
Insider Out.
Insider Out.
I like
Inside
that.
Or Out.
Inside or Out. Insider Out. Yeah.
But that kind of thing takes a lot more prep. But he's also really interested in the idea, and it might help further his career at least. Kind of not just view current events through the lens of history, but also try to make predictions, because he's made some very accurate predictions in the past, but they're just not on paper, or they're not like out there in the public. So he's interested in potentially making this into a thing where essentially he gets out there, gets his name out there, and shows his knowledge and ability, but also can gain a little bit of a reputation and possibly work that into like a consultancy somewhere, because he doesn't really want to work for the government. Apparently working for the federal government sucks. Who knew?
Everybody.
But he hates it.
Does he have the ability to foretell? That's the question. That was an enigma one. But that could definitely have a wider appeal than what we're doing.
Oh yeah. So, and that's kind of what makes it exciting. So our Wheel of Time podcast is awesome for like our tight group of followers, but this one might actually prove to be a bit bigger, assuming we can like maintain quality and plan out the episodes and stuff. And I mean, if we could get like, multiply the donors that we already have.
No, it's the
dream. We talk about this all the time. Where like, if we get a couple more projects going, we could potentially make podcasts for a living rather than do this in our spare time, which would be, the dream, like I said.
Yeah. And to be honest, since neither one of us is particularly wealthy, it doesn't take that much money to make it worthwhile to do something like this for a living.
Right. It wouldn't actually be a ton of money that would be required.
Right. And then I'd of course be working the technical angle of that, because I don't think either of you guys are
Yeah, no, not really.
interested in the technical aspect of making podcasts.
Seth will be helping a lot, but behind the scenes. So that's what we're doing on Monday. We're going to be talking to Jason, but earlier in the day, we're just going to get on with my friend. I think I already said his name out loud, but not his whole name.
You have to come up with a code name so we don't actually have to keep saying his name that we don't want to say.
I think he's going to go with like James Paine, which is a combination of two of his favorite historical figures, Thomas Paine and James Madison.
James Oliver Rigney? My favorite historical person.
Oh, and part of that is that I don't really care, but he's worried about expressing extremely unpopular opinions and how that could potentially destroy a career rather than make one. So
right, and like I'm more than willing. I mean, I don't care because I'm not worried about my opinions getting out there. But I'm more than happy to keep him anonymous.
Yeah.
But he sounds like a smart guy. I haven't had a chance to talk to him, but it sounds like he knows what he's talking about more than you or I know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think I just kind of need to help direct him and keep an organized conversation. I'm seeing it as kind of maybe like a similar dynamic to what you and I have going on, where I feel like you know the Wheel of Time a little bit better than I do, but it's being able to have the conversation is what's interesting, you know.
And that's very quickly not becoming true anymore. I think it was true when we started that I like maybe knew Wheel of Time a little bit better, but with all the research and the reading and just the work we've put into it over really the last year, I think at this point that, you know, you catch as much stuff as I do and pull stuff. You know, I'm asking you questions all the time. So it's...
Well, I think I have to do a lot more reading than you do. But I feel like I think you've read the series a bunch more times.
Yeah.
So I've read it like 3 times. I don't know. It's hard to say because sometimes I just go back and read 1 or 2 books.
So since we're speaking about outside projects, I've been working. I play Minecraft. I've been watching a lot of Minecraft YouTube videos. So I figured why not make a few of those. I got the editing software. Let me tell you, making a video, very different than making a podcast. Way different skill set, way different editing set.
Oh yeah, you've made a couple YouTube videos.
Yeah, they're out there. They're not great. I wouldn't.
Don't want to.
I don't really want to point people at them. But I'm doing like just a single player, like really boring. This is how I play the game.
Well, and like tutorials and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
and there's another thing that people make money on.
It's a Vendinor. So I used Avendosora. The first part of that means tree, and nor means cut. So it means tree cutter, which is lumberjack. So the channel is Vendinor. I think I spelled that right. So I just totally grabbed the old tongue as for my username. I like the redstone, and I like the mechanics, and I like the farms. But like I said, it's a very early attempt at, you know, it's my first video editing, so be aware that it's very, very rough. Dem bones.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?